Hello everyone, welcome back to OnlineJAcademy. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about bones of the skull. But we're just going to focus on an overview of the bones of the skull. So let's get started. I'm just going to start by giving you some notes, and then later we'll focus on labeling the bones, okay? Just showing you the bones and overview or the names of the bones. Okay, so the skull itself is composed of 22 bones, okay? It is composed of 22 bones. And these bones are joined, are united at immobile joints called sutures, right? That's why they're joined. But between these bones, we have something called a sutural ligament, which is a connective tissue. So a sutural ligament is a connective tissue between the bones, or what you find between the bones. And the only exception to this, okay, is the mandible, right? Why? Because it is united to the skull by the mobile temporomandibular joint. Okay, that's the only exception we have in the skull. The rest are joined by the immobile joints that we call sutures. So the skull itself is composed of certain cavities, or we call them the prominent cavities. So we have the cranial cavity, and the cranial cavity is composed of three main parts or fossas. We have the anterior cranial fossa, the medial cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa. All right, so let's move forward. We also have the orbits, right? Like here, you can see the orbits. It's where your eyes are. So when you hear orbits, think of your eyes. And we also have the nasal cavity, think of your nose. And we have the oral cavity, think of your mouth right now. And we have what we call the paranasal sinus, or abbreviated as PS. So let's talk about the paranasal sinus itself. Okay? So what is a paranasal sinus? So when you talk about the paranasal sinus, they're named after their bones, or in the bones in which they occur. But the functions of the paranasal sinus is they lighten the anterior portion of the skull. And the other thing that they do is they act as chambers that add resonance to the voice, or to your voice. Okay, so these are the two functions of the paranasal sinus. So let's just define them a little bit. So these are the paranasal sinus, as I said before, they are named after the bones in which they occur. So these guys are connected with the nasal cavity, lined by the mucus and filled with air. That's the reason why they are called the pneumatized bones. I mean, the bones in which they occur, they're called pneumatized bones because of this, because they are filled with air. Okay, so the bones that we have here are the sphenoid bone, the maxillary bone, the ethmoid bone, the frontal bone. All right, so let's talk about the functions of the skull itself. So the skull, it protects the brain. That's one of the main functions of the skull. Now, the other function is it gives support to the shape of the brain, right? And the other thing is it serves for attachment, right, of muscles. Like we're talking about facial muscles, like muscles that cater for facial expression and muscles of mastication. We're going to talk about this in the future. And they allow for expression through movement of muscles. So these are the functions of the skull. First of all, they protect the brain, give support to the shape of the brain, and serve for attachment of muscles, allow expression through movement of muscles. All right, so let's move on to the next part. So this is the lateral view of a skull. Okay, so this is what you have on your side view. So if we break it up into two, we have the neurocranium, and they are also called the cranial bones. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. And here we have what we call the visceral cranium as well, also known as the facial bones. So let's talk about the neurocranium.